Welcome to the American Resolution Podcast. I'm Heather Gardner, and I am so excited to welcome perhaps our biggest and most high-profile guest to the pod, California Representative Ro Khanna. Now, I actually first met Congressman Khanna at the DNC, and we geeked out together on the Biden administration's investment in building battery and semiconductor plants. Yeah, we're nerds. But it was his bill that seeks to revolutionize childcare in America that inspired me to invite him on the podcast, specifically the cost, which, if you have kids, I'm sure you know can run you as much as, if not more, than your mortgage or rent. This is a timely proposal given that our new Vice President, J.D. Vance, was just in Washington declaring,
I want more babies in the United States of America. I want more happy children in our country. And I want beautiful young men and women who are eager to welcome them into the world and eager to raise them.
Representative Khanna and I talked quite a bit about J.D. Vance and his views on the American family, but we also delved into money in politics, the role of social media in politics, and even Elon Musk. Khanna represents Silicon Valley, after all. And notably, we recorded this episode on December 6th, 2024, exactly 1 month after the election. Khanna was way more optimistic about Trump's impending second term than I was, as you'll hear. And now that we're 2 weeks past the inauguration, I wonder if anything has changed for him. We'll have to have him back and ask. Representative Ro Khanna, thank you so much for joining the American Resolution.
I'm excited to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, as we are recording this, we are exactly 1 month removed from the 2024 election. And I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think we have certainly done all the autopsies, but I do want to know how you're feeling. I'm feeling better-ish.
Well, look, the holiday season is always can always be uplifting. Yesterday I was in the Cannon building and I went down and there was a group of men in a chorus singing Silent Night. And at the same time, there was on the first floor, a group of trans activists shouting trans rights matter, being peacefully escorted out by the police. And I thought, American democracy, for all its flaws, is still like a wonderful place that you can have Christmas carols and trans demonstration in the same building. And so, when I'm down on the election, I think about all of the incredible things that we still have in our country.
Now, that is actually quite a beautiful way to look at it. I don't know that I'm in as much of an optimistic place as you are, if I'm being honest. Like I said, we have done, there's been endless podcasts. I know you've talked about it as well, like what went wrong, what Democrats can do differently, all the things. And we're not going to spend too much time on it. But if you could pick one thing, rapid fire, what was the number one thing that went wrong for Democrats in the 2024 election? Go.
We didn't talk about inequality. The reality is I represent Silicon Valley, $12 trillion of value, Apple, Google, NVIDIA. But a lot of folks, they can't pay rent. They can't get a good paying job. They can't get a house. And they're wondering how, when you got all this wealth, where's my share? Where's my security? Where's my stability? Why did it get hollowed out? And just like the Republicans are the party of tax cuts, the Democrats should be the party that actually tackles inequality in a modern economy.
It's true. America is the richest country in the world. By some measures, the richest country that ever existed in the world. And somehow it is just not trickled down to most people who live in this country. I think you're right. I think you are right. And why don't we just go ahead and dive into one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you in the first place, which I think could help so much of this inequality. As you know, you said you have kids. How old are they?
6 and 7.
6 and 7. How has your childcare experience been? I don't have any kids. Oh, see, you're starting to laugh, so you know exactly what it's going to be like. I don't have any kids, but you know what? I will say, childcare and the enormous cost of it and the hurdles that American families have to go through is one of the big reasons why I don't have kids at this point. And I've certainly seen my friends and my family members go through just this hurdle of getting childcare for the families that they truly, truly wanted. You are putting forth a childcare bill. I want you to explain, first of all, why you wanted to put this forward, and then what's in it.
Look, on a personal basis, we've been fortunate, though I think winning the lottery is if you could have either sets of grandparents near you. And, Vice President-elect Vance says, well, let's just have grandparents take care of the kids.
One of the ways that you might be able to relieve a little bit of pressure on people who are paying so much for daycare is make it so that maybe like grandma or grandpa wants to help out a little bit more, or maybe there's an aunt or uncle that wants to help out a little bit more. If that happens, you relieve some of the pressure on all the resources that we're spending in daycare.
And I said, well, a lot of people aren't that fortunate. A lot of first of all, some people's grandparents aren't in the health or condition to do that. Sometimes you're not living next to your grandparents. Some people's grandparents are having to work. We can't just rely on that. And so my bill is actually really simple. Childcare should not be more than $10 a day. Childcare workers should be paid $20 to $25 an hour. And this is what they do in Canada. This is what they do in so many other countries. Tell me something. Why wouldn't we want to invest in helping young kids when they're born to the age they're 5, the most precious thing, the most important thing I could think of in terms of shaping Americans' lives? Why would we not want to invest in that? And this would make such a difference for folks who are paying $17,000 a year for daycare or $20,000 a year for childcare. Suddenly, you're not going to be paying more than $300 a month.
That number breaks first of all, my heart, but it also breaks my brain. I was having this conversation with my sister, who is very, very fortunate to have 2 sets of grandparents nearby. And now my niece has now just started kindergarten, so off to public school, which is wonderful. It's been a huge relief for my family, for my sister's family. But I was talking to her the other day, and I was like, yeah, we're thinking about having kids, but oh my gosh, and I live in Los Angeles, so I'm just trying to get a second bedroom, so that's already adding to my cost. And then I'm like, well, then I got to get another car because we can't fit a car seat in the one we have now, and that's another cost. And then add $17,000. I think it's more like $25,000 where I live in California. And I'm just like, you know what? And I've talked myself out of this already. But that is the reality for so many different families. I'm so glad that you brought up JD Vance, because this was one of the biggest things that I was hoping for with a Democratic administration. I really, really leaned into what Kamala Harris's plans were for the $6,000 tax credits and things that she wanted to do to help American families with children and with newborns. And JD Vance and Donald Trump talked about this too, weirdly, on the campaign trail. But JD Vance said something that I don't know if I want to admit this, but I kind of agreed with him. And you brought it up, so let's talk about it. He said, this was after he had bumbled one of his interviews talking about childcare and talking about how, grandma can just do it. But I actually respected that he went back on X and put out a much longer explanation. And this is the part that I actually agree with. Parents or grandparents might not be able to help, but they might want to help. And for those families, federal policy should not be forcing one particular family model. We should try to encourage whatever is best for each individual family. And a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, that is true. Right after JD Vance's statements came out, this is when I read your bill, and you have in there a $300 per child per month for parents or relatives who do choose to stay home.
Absolutely.
That sounds like a Republican policy to me, but I'm kind of for it. Explain this.
Well, look, I think there's so many different great ways to raise a child. If you're a parent who wants to make the decision to stay at home full time, that's the hardest job. I mean, I have so much respect for parents who make that choice, if that's their choice, and they should get a stipend, just like if someone was going to go to childcare or daycare. Why? It's devaluing their work not to be helping. Or if you have a grandparent who's able to do that, makes the choice that they're not going to go in as a sales rep for Walmart or wherever they're working, but they're going to spend that time with the kid. Well, we want to compensate that. If you're one of the people who said, no, I want to go and my employer provides childcare, well, we should, as long as they meet standards and they're going to provide it at $10 a day, then we should subsidize that. Or if you want to do it with a nonprofit or a group of your neighbors, we should do that. I think that choice is really important. In FDR's day, they had war nurseries because all the women were Rosie the Riveter helping build America's industry. And so the men finally figured out, well, who's going to look after the kids? And we literally had 3,000 war nurseries and universal childcare. But that's probably not realistic today where one size fits all childcare centers around America. And what my view is, we got to give people choice in how to do it. But what I would challenge Vice President Vance is, are you going to put your money where your mouth is? Are we really going to see this materialize? And I'll vote for it. I mean, I think it's going to take a lot more than $5,000 to pay the $16,000, $20,000 daycare. But if we want to start at $5,000, fine. But I want to see that in your budgets. I want you to actually vote for it as Republicans, because the rhetoric is one thing, but what about delivery?
This is my biggest gripe with the Republican Party, period. They talk so much and they want to put themselves and position themselves as the pro-family party with little to zero action. And when he said this, and I was like, okay, buddy, I agree with you. Now, where's the bill? And your bill came out. And there has been zero bills from J.D. Vance or any Republican Party that is addressing these big issues here. I don't know if you remember when Trump went on that wildly unhinged rant when specifically asked about childcare costs. Somehow tariffs are going to pay for childcare costs. That's just not how economics works.
I guess
how could we forget?
They call it message discipline, right? Whatever question comes up, he's like, "Well, I want tariffs and I want the immigrants all out," or something, and it's all Mexico and China's fault.
Somehow that's going to help the childcare situation. No, but there are no bills coming out from the Republican side right now. It's an interesting time to talk about choice too, specifically for women, because you are correct. Women mostly have the burden of taking care of children, taking care of elderly parents. It's not always the case, but statistically, that's just the way that it is. And, for all of us talking about choice here, the Republican Party actually really, really is pushing like this traditional lifestyle. You should want to stay home. You should, as a woman, you should choose to stay home. It is the joy and the purpose of your life to stay home with your children. And sure, if you believe that, and I think a lot of people and a lot of women would love that. But the reality is we're living in this world where they just can't make that decision. So it is such a frustrating thing to be like, to them telling women, choose this without a pathway to actually choose to stay home with your kids.
Well, look, I consider myself a feminist. As I understood it, it was that we want women to have the choice, and of course we want women to become brilliant writers and philosophers and scientists and political leaders. Eventually, president. We tried. And that's incredible.
We've gotten so close.
Society needs it. I mean, some of the leading Nobel laureates and people who are inventing the most important things are women. The person who invented mRNA largely to help vaccinate us against COVID was a brilliant scientist. She was affiliated with Penn. But I also have tremendous admiration and equal admiration for someone who says, okay, you know what? I'm going to go and raise kids. And that to me is as important as being a Nobel laureate. My mom, for many years, was a stay-at-home mom, and she was a substitute school teacher. But and her life was my brother and I, and don't blame her for my flaws, but certainly for any things that I've done well. I mean, she deserves an enormous credit. My dad was involved too, but my mom deserves enormous credit. And my view is, okay, if you're a mother or a father and you're making that choice, then we need to honor and respect you and make it possible. And that means giving a stipend if you do that, but it also means childcare if you choose. If your choice is no, I want to work, and that's really what feminism means, which is giving people the ability to pursue happiness and fulfillment as they see it.
Why do you think, though, there's such a disconnect with the Republicans who say they want these things for families, who say they want these things for women, and yet I have a hunch that a $300 stipend for a stay-at-home mother is dead on arrival on Republicans' desks. I just don't get a sense that that is where they want to put the energy here. Why do you think there is such a disconnect when they say they want these things? Is it purely the cost?
honestly, in this case, and $300 is just a starting point. It probably is not even enough for many women. We want to do something where
But
it's
it is
so
a good
obvious.
start.
It has this good start. I honestly think it's just the cost. They are reflexively opposed to government improving people's lives. And the reality is government does a lot. Not only do they build the roads, they give us public education. They provide Social Security, they provide Medicare. They were responsible for helping build so many of America's factories. They're responsible for so many or great public education, universities. And what has made America incredible is that we have this capitalist system of entrepreneurship, but we have, well, that's why I call myself a progressive capitalist, we have this view of government that says, okay, let's give people the security to have a fair shot. And that means healthcare, education, housing, and I would say childcare. But the Republican view is no, you can do all of this. Let's just have tax cuts. Let's have the nonprofits do it. Let's have the churches do it. Let's have synagogues and temples do it. And maybe some people are blessed and they have a church where they raise enough contributions to through the Sunday tides that they can do it. But a lot of communities can't. And so that's where the government steps in.
Well, I do have to ask this question. How much would it cost to implement, capping childcare a day at $10, a base pay for childcare workers at $24 an hour, which we didn't even have a chance to get into, but it is amazing in my opinion, and $300 per child per month, parents and relatives who want to stay home. How much would that actually cost?
It would cost $80 billion a year. Now, put it in perspective. That is about 1/10 of our military budget. Elon Musk is talking about saving $1 trillion of waste, fraud, and abuse without touching Social Security, Medicare. Maybe he doesn't get to $1 trillion just doing that. Well, let's say you can just get $1 billion to save, $100 billion of saving from the 5 prime defense contracts or some of the other waste, fraud, and abuse. You're telling me our country can't make this investment in America's children and America's families? I was reading some focus group that was talking to a steel worker in Pennsylvania, in a 37-year-old guy. And I said, okay, this guy's going to love my bill to build new steel plants. This is my core, one of my core bills. I want to build new steel plants. You know what he's first talking about? He says, the thing that hurts me the most is we're paying $16,000 for daycare, and it's killing us as a family. I think a bill about an investment in childcare, it's not just a issue for women, it's an issue for families. And it would provide so much relief, particularly to people between sort of 25 and 50. And it would provide such a head start for our kids who we're going to need to flourish and to compete with China. It should be a no-brainer.
It should be a no-brainer. And every single study from these countries like Canada, like you mentioned, who have already done these things, it is not just a family policy, it is an economic policy. We always want to talk about Wall Street doing good and the economy is booming. You want to boom the economy, put $16,000 a year back into American households, back into the middle class. Let's pivot here to DOGE because, yes, I mean, the reality is this is a wonderful bill in my opinion. This would help American families. But the price tag on it, which was my hunch all along, why Republicans, and especially like J.D. Vance, who's smart, Trump, he bumbled his way through stuff. I know that he doesn't know what he's talking about when he talks about tariffs, but J.D. Vance is a smart guy. And he very, very conveniently left out, we should do all of these things, but he's not putting forth the bill because he knows how much it is going to cost. And you're right, like 1/10 of our, what did you say, 1/10 of our military budget?
1/10 of the defense budget, 1/10. The interesting thing is when there's a social program, they use the 10-year number. When it's a defense budget, they only use the one-year number. No one will ever say, well, defense is going to cost $8 trillion over 10 years. But if you're doing childcare, they'll, of course, say $800 billion over 10 years.
That is such I had never thought about it like that. That is such a smart way of looking at it. Wow, you're smart. You know what? You should be in like Congress or something.
Oh, please. The people who have the influence now are podcast and influencers like you.
Oh, hey, we'll get into that in a second. But let's talk about Doge here, because you want to add $80 billion to our national deficit, and they're looking to cut about $1 trillion from it. So you actually have a working relationship with Elon Musk. You have come out very optimistically about Doge. I live on the complete opposite side of this spectrum. I don't trust billionaires. I don't trust them with my money, first of all. They are talking about overhauling my tax dollars. I don't trust them with it. I barely trust Jeff Bezos with my Amazon packages, let alone now he's positioned himself. Now he's interested in being a part of Doge. I don't like it at all. Do you like it? You have, like I said, you've expressed some optimism about this. What do you know about this that I don't know about this that makes you so optimistic?
Well, I want to be fair-minded about it. There are places where your skepticism is totally justified. If they try to eliminate the Department of Education and suddenly you've got kids who are in low-income schools aren't going to get the funding they need, or kids who may have autism or special needs wouldn't get the funding. They should not lay a hand on Social Security or Medicare or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that has saved $20 billion for Americans because it makes sure that people aren't being charged hidden credit card fees. Didn't Donald Trump talk about limiting interest rates on credit cards? That's part of what the CFPB does, or hidden mortgage fees. So there's a lot about government that is good and fair and standing up for people against special interests. But the one place that is 56% of our federal budget that does need clear reform is the defense budget. It's almost $1 trillion. When Bill Clinton was there, it was about $400 billion, Obama $600 billion. And there are 5 companies that are basically monopolies. Now, Elon Musk with SpaceX, thanks to President Obama, helped break the monopoly of Boeing and Lockheed that were launching all of our space shuttles into space. They were launching them to put satellites. And Elon said, look, I can do it much, much cheaper because we can reuse these shuttles. And Obama, through Ash Carter, allowed him to do it, and it really saved American taxpayers' money. So if he can help open up competition like he did with SpaceX at the Pentagon, and if that saves $100 billion and we could put it for childcare, I'm for that. And it would be foolish to think that there's no waste.
But you know that they're not going to cut the defense budget. Let's be real here. Congress has not cut the defense budget since 2013. And every year it goes up and up and up and up and up. And they are willing to cut literally everything. They're willing to let your grandmother go homeless before they let one of those rockets not be built. So I know you're trying to be fair, and I know you're trying to be optimistic. But we also have to live in the reality that what is the chances that they actually cut some of these $1 trillion from the defense budget?
Well, if they're serious about the deficit, that's the first place to look. It's 56% of the federal budget.
Are they serious people, though? Let's be real.
Well, what I'm trying to do is to direct them in that place so that they focus there. And if they don't, I'll be the first person I already have who says I will oppose them with every fiber of my being if they start going after Social Security and Medicare and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. But I think, I was talking to someone who was a progressive. He said, I want to spend money, but I don't like wasting money. And the effective government, Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the New Deal was against wasteful spending. So for the Democrats to say, look, we understand that we're not for waste and monopolies and that we're going to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, that's needed so that they'll say, okay, the kind of guy, he's not just going to go and be a drunken sailor and spend our money when he's talking about childcare at $10 an hour and Medicare for all. To trust us to do that, we got to say we're going to go after the fraud and the waste and the abuse, and even that there's some duplicative agencies at the Commerce Department. I know not everything in government is efficient. I think that builds credibility for the progressive case to get what I want, which is healthcare for everyone, childcare for everyone, housing for everyone. And that's beyond the Elon Musk. That's really where I think the Democratic Party needs to position itself to be able to deliver on these goals.
I do think it's admirable. And I was on your Twitter today. You're on all the apps. Are you on Blue Sky yet, by the way? Have you jumped over there yet?
I am. I've joined, but I'm not. I'm not one of these people. Look, I'm not like, let's do a mass exodus. So, do I think that the algorithm may favor conservatives on X? Sure, but what are we? Are we just going to start talking to each other? I mean, I go on Fox.
That was my thing too.
I went on Ben Shapiro's show. We debated the mid $15 wage. Like we have the arguments on our side. We shouldn't be afraid of going out and making those arguments. What's the worst that's going to happen? They'll say, "Oh, Ro Khanna is a communist socialist," and someone else will say they're a fascist.
You know what? They're going to say that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Even the fascism. Truman called Dewey a fascist. Like every election, one candidate calls the other candidate a fascist, and the other candidate calls the other person a socialist and communist. And the American people are like, tune out. This is one of the problems with the campaign. All they want to know is, what are you going to do to make my life a little better?
Correct.
Nixon once said politicians are like toilet fixtures. Americans don't expect them to be beautiful. They just want to make sure they work. And one of the things as a politician, you got to remember is you're held in low esteem, unfortunately, and that you just got to say, like, what are you actually going to get done for people? How are you going to help people? How are you going to make the life a little bit better so that you could actually think about having kids? And I think if we focused on that as a party, we'd win, because we've got actual substantive ideas of what we can do.
I agree with you. What was it? I think it was Bill Clinton, and correct me if I'm wrong here, who said it's the economy, stupid. Totally agree with that sentiment. What I was going to say is, like, I appreciate that you are actually willing to work with Republicans, because I am not one of those progressives or Democrats that's just like standing alone talking to the people that just agree with me. Like, the beauty of America, what you opened the podcast, what you opened this interview with, is that we have all different sides and we should have a willingness to work together. I love that dream for America, but we're still in reality where Republicans don't want to listen. Although I will say, I was on your X and Vivek Ramaswamy was giving you praise for your open-mindedness. And I guess the honey approach is better than the vinegar approach. So I truly do admire that you're going to get in there. And I'm going to hold you accountable to make sure that you hold them accountable with my money.
And I don't think honey is enough. I think we need vinegar too. But
okay. Whew. Okay. Thank you.
I'm not Pollyannish here, and I'm not naive that, Trump may start, raiding employers and asking Americans for their paperwork. And, I don't, and his cabinet picks, come on. And so I don't want to be Pollyannish. I understand the frustration. I understand the anger. I understand the fear of what's coming. But I fundamentally, look, I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. My grandfather spent 4 years in jail in the 1940s alongside Gandhi to fight for India's independence. My parents came here as immigrants. We grew up Indian American of Hindu faith, though we still celebrate Christmas and the holidays. And in the 1980s and 1990s in Bucks County, it was almost all white. And I had teachers and Little League coaches and others who said, Ro, you can do whatever you want in this country. And that faith in America has stayed with me. I believe it's deep down a decent country. And I'm hopeful we're going to get there.
So what made you get into politics then? Was it like seeing your grandfather go through that, or just the belief that you could do anything in this country? What propelled you to want to run for office then?
Well, my grandfather had a huge impact on me. Of course, by the time I was born in 1976 in Philadelphia, India had been free for many years, and he passed away when I was 9. But his story was so legendary in our family that it always made me care about social justice and human rights. And I wasn't sure 100% I was going to run for office, but then the Iraq War happened. And I was really opposed to the Iraq War. And I ran a primary against someone in my own party who had voted for the war. And I had this spectacular showing of getting 19%. He got 71%. But I felt like I stood up for the right thing. And I just got active in the community. Obama wins. I get to go work for him and was a deputy assistant secretary of commerce focused on bringing manufacturing back. And I felt at that point that, look, I could really help. I understand some of this technology and AI and a lot of what's happening in Silicon Valley. And if we could mobilize that to build industry and new industry across America, maybe we can help become the kind of multiracial democracy Obama was talking about. So that's what inspired me to get into politics.
I love hearing that. And like I said, I'm actually pretty struck by your optimism of, first of all, this administration that's coming through, but just America in general, because I feel, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm not optimistic about this administration because I'd much rather have been working with Kamala Harris.
Fair.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that there are one or two areas where either they'll work with us or we'll call them on their bluff. I mean, imagine if Elon Musk proposes $100 billion of defense cuts, and then the Republican Congress ignores him and just adds money to defense. You know, when I am the only vote against the defense budget year after year after year in the House Armed Services Committee, there's a clip on Instagram where they literally boo me when I cast the no vote in a joking way, but literally they're like, Khanna, boo, or something. And now you're going to have your own side say, okay, cut this stuff. I want them to explain to the American public why they're not going to do it. And I think that I want them to explain it, why they're not giving this $5,000 child tax credit or $300 a month stipend to people who stay at home and raise their kids. I want them to explain why they're not going to cap interest rates at 10%. You know, now they made all these promises. And, you know, Kamala Harris, our vice president, couldn't hold them accountable because they weren't in power. But now we can hold them accountable.
That is funny. What do you think would happen if Elon was like, yeah, we've got to cut the military budget, and Congress and Trump was like, absolutely not? My feeling, I don't know if you saw it, but I have like this idea that the Oval Office is becoming the Broval office. I did like a little video skit on it. It's the Broval office, and I just feel like the bros are gonna start butting heads. I just feel like it's not even gonna take much because there's so much ego in such a small little oval space. What do you think would happen? What do you think would happen if Elon proposed something like this and Republicans were like, nah, we're not doing that? Like,
maybe he'd come back to the fold. You know, I mean, that's
what I was about to say. Do you think he'd like go ahead and switch back?
You know, people say, oh, they're gone, they're irredeemable. I don't want to be too philosophical about it, but my grandfather, you know, he grew up with the philosophy of satyagraha, where Gandhi famously like made sandals for colonial oppressors. Now, I'm not saying that we take that attitude or what Dr. King had or John Lewis had in terms of infinite patience and trying to see the good in everyone. But I do think that we should at least be open to persuasion. We should at least be open to making the argument that we can build the tent better. And I refuse to believe that in America that voted for Barack Hussein Obama twice, that somehow we don't have a majority that we can build.
Well, I want to say, Elon, come on back to the Democratic Party, but I don't know if that aligns with my morals. I don't know if that aligns with your morals, because you talk a big talk about getting big money, and let's be real, Elon is the biggest of the monies, out of politics. Let's talk about that, because I think that was one of the biggest, in my opinion, it was one of the defining things of this election. Elon coming in with his endless supply of money. I personally feel that he bought an election. Through the purchase of X, through the money that he gave to Trump, through these contests that he were doing that were maybe illegal, maybe not illegal. We'll never know. Nobody's going to press charges now. But getting big money out of politics, explain why you think that's important for Democrats, but also America.
Well, I mean, it should outrage everyone that basically these billionaires are fighting on television with their ads, and most Americans are supposed to just be spectators on watching these ads on their mobile phones or their television sets, and that's supposed to determine the elections. Imagine if our founders saw what was happening with democracy. We didn't fight a revolution to say, let's have a clash of billionaires, Gates versus Musk, and whoever can do the better ads, that candidate's going to win. It's outrageous. And so, yes, let's eliminate all these super PACs. But I've said, at the very least, let's look at what Maine did. They regulated the super PAC, so you couldn't give millions of dollars. You were limited to $3,300. Elon can't go give a candidate more than $3,300, but yes, he can give super PACs millions of dollars. We've got to get this money out of politics, and we've got to be honest that the billionaires are on both sides. I mean, it's not, because when you say, oh, it's all one side, then people say, well,
No.
okay, what about all the billionaires on your side? So we got billionaires everywhere. And that's partly what's upsetting the American people. And it's led to certain horrible policies, like corporations being allowed to offshore jobs in search of cheap wages and profit maximization, or corporate raiders who buy up these companies and hollow out, lay off people, and basically sell out, liquidate all the assets to build up wealth. And all of this is going on because these rich people continue to contribute to get candidates, or our healthcare system, where you get deny on your claims. And then rich people are contributing to say, no, we can't get Medicare for all. I mean, it's the root of some of the problems.
If I was like Queen of America for a day and I could go back in time and take away one thing, I would repeal Citizens United. That I think that is the root of most of our modern day problems here in America. And I do agree with what you're saying, especially when it comes to like PAC money and these big money organizations. Correct me if I'm wrong here on what you believe when it comes to PAC money and Democrats taking PAC money, because right now, if Democrats did that, my biggest fear, and just to clear the air, I take PAC money. I have taken PAC money. This is my first time ever doing it as like a content creator. This is my first time ever making money off of doing this during the 2024 election. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of that money came from PAC organizations. If we as Democrats take a stance against big money in politics now, are we just shooting ourselves in the foot? Because we know that the Republicans are not going to do that. If we take a moral stance before legislation gets it out of all politics, will we ever win an election again?
Well, look, I don't take any PAC money. I don't take any lobbyist money, but I represent a district which is very wealthy. And so there are a lot of individuals who can contribute individually. But what I said is no super PAC money in Democratic primaries. If you're running for Congress, if you're running for the House, if you're running for governor, if you're running for president, and you're fighting amongst other Democrats, we don't need the super PACs. But you can't unilaterally disarm against the Republicans. So if you make it out of the Democratic primary, now you're up against the Republican, and the Musk PAC is spending millions of dollars against you. We do need Democratic super PACs then to spend the money. But why are we wasting that money on Democratic primaries anyway? So I think a compromise is to say none of this PAC and super PAC money in a Democratic primary, but have the arsenal ready if the Republicans are going to spend it.
I think that would be a really good compromise. And I do think that would show the American people that we are on their side, because I would say there's nothing that makes me believe, but like people still believe that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos has their best interests at heart. And I cannot believe that billionaires have our best interest at heart. I mean, especially with what happened this past week with United Health Group and the sentiment that has been coming out of people right now. This big disdain for big companies and billionaires and all this stuff. But I think it would make a stand. I just worry that we just won't win elections if we're outmatched.
Well, we should be outmatched, but we've got to be the party that's the party of anti-corruption and getting the big money out, and show that. Show that if we had more candidates saying, look, we're not going to take PAC and lobbyist money, and we're going to not have super PACs in Democratic primaries, and we're not going to take the corporate PAC money to a DNC, which Obama did, and build a small donor base. And then we have the fight with Republicans and say, okay, you're doing super PACs, well, we're not going to unilaterally disarm. I think it at least shows the Democratic Party is on the side of reform. We've got to be the party that's anti-war, and we've got to be the party that's for transformational, bold economic change that says the system isn't working for too many people. And I think if we do those three things, we're the non-status quo party, then we're going to win.
I definitely agree. Do you think Democrats should make public funding of elections a centerpiece? I'll be honest, I don't know much about public funding elections because it's not a system that I've ever worked in. It's not a very popular system in America. But do you think that's something that Democrats could run on? Or do you think it's just more what you suggested? PAC money, no PAC money until you're on the national stage, basically.
I think the public financing is something I support, but I also support this sense of giving everyone vouchers of, every voter gets $100 that they can only spend in elections. And, everyone then has the ability. Every voter is also a donor. And New York and Seattle, some places have tried that with some success. So we can look at how do we empower more people. But the big thing right now, in my view, is just get the billionaires out of spending, 50, 100 million. You had that happen with Sherrod Brown. I mean, it was awful. I mean, millions and millions coming in these super PACs. And that's just not democracy.
Well, I have to sigh when you say that. You're like, let's get billionaires out of politics. In a time we are about to usher in, I think he's up to 12, Trump is up to 12 billionaires in his personal cabinet at this point. I mean, I think at least for the time being, they have solidified themselves in Washington in politics. And certainly for the Republican side, since it was such a winning strategy, I just don't see them giving that up anytime soon.
Yeah, well, look, he's got more billionaires than anyone in the cabinet.
Yeah.
I think I'll credit her because I was having breakfast with Representative Jayapal, and she was totaling it up, and it was like $300 billion of the net worth of the incoming Trump cabinet. But look, being wealthy is not the issue. I mean, Franklin Roosevelt was wealthy and Robert Kennedy was wealthy. The question is, whose side are you on? How are you fighting? And what ideals are you on? And Elon Musk is a complicated person. I mean, the part that Elon should be for is the building things and the building of the future. But we've got to make that in the interest of the public. Where you need entrepreneurs, you need business leaders. But what FDR did, it was called $1 a year men because we were a gendered society and there wasn't this idea that women could actually be entrepreneurs. Today, it'd be $1 a year person. And all these business leaders came in and worked with FDR to industrialize America. With universal childcare, because we wanted to defeat the Germans and the Italians and the Japanese, and we did that. And that's what we need to summon that again.
All right, one more topic I would love to get your opinion on, because people may not know this. People listening to my podcast may not know this, but you represent Silicon Valley in California. You represent a lot of these tech companies, and part of this conversation with politics and big money in politics, a lot of that big money, I mean, we're talking about Jeff Bezos, we're talking about Elon Musk, of course, comes from big tech. And the social media game was a huge part of the 2024 election as well. What do you think about social media being a part of our elections? I mean, it's because people like me, I'm an influencer. I think the stat was 1 in 5 Americans, 20% of Americans get their news solely from an influencer. I'm a part of this too, for better or for worse. But what do you think social media, the platforms themselves, role should play? Keeping in mind that the people who own them are the billionaires who paid for these elections.
Well, I think they should make sure that you own your data. And I've been proposing an Internet Bill of Rights. I think they should make sure kids are protected. That's why we should pass the Kids Online Safety Act, so kids aren't seeing algorithms with eating disorders and things that are going to lead them to suicidal thoughts. I think there need to be a lot of platforms so you have competition. So you can go on X, you can go on Blue Sky, you can go on Instagram. We need more competition of platforms. And I think the Democrats need to be on these platforms and on podcasts and active on it. Do I think that it's a good thing that we have a lot of influencer? Yes, because I don't want just Rachel Maddow on MSNBC deciding who should be the Democratic nominee. I'd rather we have 200 influencers, and you got to go out there. Look, if it weren't for social media, you would not have Barack Obama and you would not have Bernie Sanders. Now, you probably would not have Donald Trump. So you're adding more risk to the system. But ultimately, I'm for democratizing things. I'm not for this a group of pundit class sitting in D.C. Anointing who should be our representatives and senators and governors and presidents.
Why do you think it has taken Congress so long? Because social media apps and Instagram, Twitter, now X, Facebook, I mean, these have been around for a really, really long time. But I mean, the internet has been around even longer. And when you dive into how little regulation there is on the World Wide Web, like, it is pretty shocking how behind we are, and especially compared to other countries. So I'm a glass, I think you know by this point, I'm a pretty glass half empty kind of person here. I'm skeptical of everything. And I agree with what you're saying about social media apps and the regulation. But if we couldn't even get the internet regulated. What makes you think that we can get these social media groups regulated and, I mean, broken up too? You think that Facebook and Instagram, you think they're going to be broken up? You think that Zuckerberg is going to let that happen?
I think they should never have allowed WhatsApp and Instagram to be
fair.
Acquired by Facebook. Now,
but they did. But they did.
Now we got to make sure that we don't make that mistake again, and we allow new platforms to emerge. But look, I have a lot of respect for President Biden. But do you think the American people, when he was up there, had the confidence that this was going to be the person who was going to be able to regulate tech or understand tech? I mean, you need a new generation who are actually on these platforms, who tweet out things themselves. I mean, there are times when staff puts out tweets for me or puts out things, but I know how to use the platforms. I'm on the platforms. I have some understanding, and you need someone to say, okay, this is a priority, and we understand this world, and we're now going to have sensible regulations, because not that we want to censor speech, but we want to make speech better, and we want to make it a place where it has less hate and less bots that are spewing misinformation. This was not an issue of priority because a lot of the people who are in charge of the party are not on these platforms. But a new generation, my hope is, will tackle it.
My hope is that as well. But as much as we are ushering in a new generation of people, I think we have how many Gen Z in Congress now? Not that many, but a few. We're getting the first Gen Zs into Congress. Yeah. But at the same time, especially, I mean, the leadership of the Democratic Party, we're pretty old. I'm not gonna lie. We're pretty up there. So my biggest fear is that by the time we get a generation who understands what these apps are, first of all, there's going to be something totally new. And it's just going to be too little, way, way, way too late. And misinformation is such a huge problem, especially on these social media apps, who don't have, I mean, they're under no liability to monitor what people put on there. I know Section 230, that bill, makes them not liable for that. But do you think we need to take a relook at this kind of stuff to try to combat misinformation, to try to regulate these apps a little bit more and reel in people? I don't say people like me, but I check my sources. I'm a responsible person that puts stuff out there, but not everybody is, Well,
I do think we need to have Section 230 reform. I mean, on the very simple case, if you're inciting violence on these platforms, if there's speech doing that, you should have a responsibility to take it down. Just like you have a responsibility to take down a speech that violates the copyright code. That's the fastest speech that gets taken down. Yet you don't have that same responsibility under 230 to take down speech that incites illegal conduct. But more than that, here's a simple thing that would really make these platforms a lot better. A lot of the hate, a lot of the misinformation is spewed by bots, not even real people. So why not require more verification for getting onto one of these social media apps? You know why they don't want to do it? Because they want their the user base to grow, and growth is the only measurement. So of course they don't want to take time to have any kind of verification. But if you have some kind of verification requirements, even basic guidelines, that would do a lot to clean up these apps.
I did not know that copyright infringement is the first thing to get flagged, because of course it is, because I don't want to get sued by Taylor Swift for someone misappropriating her music. That is so interesting to me. And of course, that makes me mad too, that we can't get COVID misinformation and vaccine information taken down, but Taylor Swift's music will remain safe. Representative Khanna, thank you so much for joining me. You gave me a lot of time, and I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything else you wanted to add before you sign off and get back to your busy schedule?
I appreciate your voice. I appreciate what you're doing. We need people like you out there in the fight to take back the country. And your skepticism is important, because we can't be Pollyannish, but we got to have faith that we're going to win back the power.
Well, I will say, if skepticism is healthy, but you know what? Your optimism is too. And I really do appreciate that you're willing to go and fight for us, even though it's been a rough month realizing what's coming. But you seem like you're just ready to just roll up the sleeves and get back to work. And we need people like you too.
We need everything. Everything we've got.
We do.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining the American Resolution. Join the conversation by following us at American Resolution Pod on every social platform. This podcast is a production of Rat Trap Entertainment in partnership with Sheila Conlon and Cabana 14 Productions. Produced by Heather Gardner and Lauren Gardner with limited support from their cat, that little bastard.